Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It is, I think it's Wednesday, May 25th at 5:18 p.m. my time. And god damn, just yet another tragedy. I mean, another avoidable, unbelievably horrific tragedy, especially if you were in the crosshairs of the last two murders, not suicides, but, murders by deranged people targeting the most vulnerable amongst us in just incredibly public places. I mean, these two mass shootings, one, of course, in Buffalo, New York, that took 10 lives, and, in a grocery store, a racist targeting. And then the other one, of course, yesterday in Texas, in Austin, or Austin, what am I talking about? In central Texas, near San Antonio. But, you know, innocent children, again, mowed down by a lunatic dressed in body armor. And the issues really, and we see it time and time again as it relates to gun violence, right? Is, well, Second Amendment issues, and ultimately the nature and the magnitude of the outrage and the shock and the horror. And most people are uh, supportive of some type of regulation as it relates to the purchasing of specific guns and ammunition and other background checks and those types of things. And then, of course, NRA and other more radical leaning, Second Amendment people are like, no, hell no, never in a million years. It's about our liberty. You can't give this sort of thing up. In light of, really, if it comes down to it, I mean, are you kidding me? If these were Middle Easterners, for example, right, and they happen to, strap a suicide belt on and go into one of our elementary schools, I think we would just be unfreaking believably horrified. And same with, in a grocery store, and we'd call these people terrorists, right? Hitting soft targets. I mean, this madness is insane because we have street lights. We have, rules and regulations when you go on an aircraft. We have security at airports. We have a degree, so many sorts of checks and balances of things that all of us tend to accept, right? In the light of certain outcomes that could be detrimental or potentially unreasonably levered to increase death of some sort, right? That's a thing. And most of us, if you have knowledge of something that's going to happen, you'd want to stop it, right? Like a theft of an old woman's purse. But I mean, you can't compare that, of course, to this insane tragedy that is so gut-wrenching and sickening. But the point of me bringing it up, the fact that we're all, a deluge with this, no matter what type of media you tune into, unless, of course, you're tuned into, Johnny and Amber again in the closing sorts of moments of this trial, which I know millions and millions are. But in the case of, the focal point of what it is that I have been trying to get your attention about, I need you to think about this in terms of perspective, okay? The first is follow the money, right? If the NRA didn't have the power that it did with congressional people that it did and those that are politicians, would we have these types of scenarios? No, we wouldn't. We would have a functioning democracy where the majority opinion would rule, and there would be, sensible legislation and regulation to be able to prevent madmen from getting Kevlar bulletproof vests and body armor to go into, an elementary school with, high-powered machinery weapons that are military grade that you can buy without any background check, or really, I think, without very little identification. Less so than getting a driver's license, for example. So, I mean, come on, it just makes common sense. And I'm a Second Amendment guy too. I'm a freaking Texas cowboy in the West, in the Wild West, and all that stuff. But this stuff, shooting up, children is just sickening. But in light of the larger, broader corruption contextualization, let's think about these, mass, shootings and these targeted scenarios. In the first argument, based on liberty, okay, so if these guys who get these armaments, who want to create, let's say, militias, want to attack the United States military, honestly, how well do you think that's going to go? The most powerful military in the history of the world, if you've got militias, even armed with the most sophisticated weaponry, and even the most, incredibly trained individuals that might have been, for example, in some of the highest classifications of our military, particularly as it relates to, like airborne and SEAL team and all those types of, insanely trained guys. And let's say those guys go rogue. You get a bunch of those guys together, they could do some damage, but against the United States military writ large, good luck. Okay? And so I'm trying to tell you in this kind of context that the nature of the influence of the lobby of the NRA is run and fueled by what? The clock's ticking. What's it fueled by? Consumption. There's a shit ton of money in it, and don't rock the boat where the money is. That's what we're talking about in a situation like this. Let's put this in the context to really the last 20 years that I keep harping on. Honestly, the 9/11 pancake of the two towers that took out 3,900 Americans, that just vaporized in a mind-blowing situation for those who actually witnessed this in real time, and something that only happened in movies before that, literally, who knew people in the towers that got pulverized, not to mention heroes of the FDNY and the NYPD that, went to go save these people that just got freaking collapsed. That whole thing happened because of breaches in national security that the Bush administration had actionable information that they didn't respond to, that they hid from the other departments of agencies that we spent billions of dollars to prevent. That was 20 years ago. We had incredibly sophisticated intelligence machinery and apparatus that we could spy on anybody 20 years ago and listen to, in a conversation to somebody in a cafe in frickin' Paris planning something like 9/11. You think that stuff just happens because, we just, we weren't up to the task? Bullshit. The Cheney and Bush scenario prevented it from happening. We have this isn't, Alex Jones talking. This is real life situations. We know people from the NSA and people within both branches of these intelligence divisions at FBI and CIA that proved and said, A, we knew exactly that the terrorists were in the country. Many of us knew that they were, many of us, the FBI, I'm saying, as well as those in the CIA, knew that, they were taking, lessons in flying aircraft without learning how to land, and this put up, red flags to the FBI and so forth, and then they try to channel this stuff. Meanwhile, the Cheney and Bush administration prevented at that time it was, within the airports and the securities, those that check passports and those types of things, from flagging Saudi nationals, for one. Okay? And there's also all sorts of evidence for this guy, bin Sultan, who was one of the top dogs within the Saudi royal monarchy, super tight with the Bushes and everything else. Regardless of what, it's pretty goddamn obvious after 20 years, we didn't want that to happen. So thinking about this in terms of shock and awe and everything else, 3,900 Americans just vanished like that. We had a war 20 years later. Millions of people died throughout all these wars. For what? For the relationship of the frickin' Saudis in being the global swing producer of oil and trading in dollars, okay? For better or for worse, that's the reason. Okay, so follow the money. What happens in 2008? Well, as I've shown you over and over in what we produced in the con at www.thecon.tv, is the A, B, C's, and D's of the largest criminal conspiracy pipeline in the history of the world that stopped the global frickin' economy dead in its tracks, frickin' sent everybody over the edge, backed up the bus, ran over everybody, kicked them to the curb, threw them in the trash, and then the guys that created all this stuff had a backdoor to the fucking Federal Reserve, and it was all about what? The money. So you've got these criminal situations that have these diabolical, unbelievable outcomes and consequences of death and tragedy, and that's just for starters. Then you've got all of the, the criminality and the insurrection and all of these things that have been going on that we can see from a mile away that the Department of Justice and the FBI aren't really nailing at this point. So whether it's, the red or the blue or whatever team, it's power that's got complete control of this apparatus for decades now that absolutely is destroying everything. And not only that, it's precarious. We're seeing markets fluctuate like this every other day. Just people are making like huge losses, in their portfolios and their retirement and everything else. But traders are like betting the margins and the shorts and this and that and in the 15 different ways that they bet and all of this stuff. And I guarantee you, most of them at the apex of the situation with like the financial, the asset managers and the hedge funds, they're expecting, the Federal Reserve to do what it's done for the last 13 years. which is, again, when shit hits the fan, be there as a last resort, the lender of last resort, where they have this misnomer of like, there is no alternative, then have the central bank pump trillions of dollars back in the economy that these fucking hyenas feed off of. That you don't understand because you don't understand the con, because they own the whole thing. What I'm telling you is it's complete corruption and control that has created devastation for decades and will continue to do so across the board. And as such, I mentioned this in a couple of other videos, but I'm going to lay this up again, is that, look, I joined up with the forces of the Justice Party because we've got to have a political solution. We've got to create a national campaign where we educate people that are fed up with fucking corruption. The bottom line is that I know personally and can illustrate with details that we have literally spent north of $50 trillion into a criminal enterprise since 2009, of which $29 trillion came out as a result of the 2008 great financial crisis. It's our system. Sorry, I'm shouting. I'm a little emotional like so many of you. And also, for those that are just, tapped into the Amber Heard trial, honestly, I listen to a lot of this stuff. I'm getting bits and pieces like everybody else because I can't sit through the whole thing. But I swear to God, I have seen so many times where it appears to me that Johnny's a mess, but he got set up in a lot of ways. And he's made a lot of mistakes. But it's like, my God, it's like the level of depravity that people will go to for control and power and lies and deception to create outcomes is insane. And so if your brand of like attention is on something like Johnny and Amber, you know it just by seeing it. But now multiply that by literally trillions when I'm talking about this geopolitical financial matrix of power that controls the world. And is Putin in on it? Yeah, all of his oligarchs have been laundering money throughout the Western financial system for fucking decades by stealing and looting money from the assets that Russia has. For whatever reason, Putin decided, hey, fuck the world order. I'm going to go my own way. Who knows what his old end game is? Maybe when you have complete control, the only thing that gets you off is bloodlust. And I think about corruption. Like, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. I've been to Mexico. I've been all over the Caribbean. I've been throughout Europe. I've been a lot of countries, quite frankly, and I've seen corruption up close and personal. I can tell you corruption in Brazil is insane. Do you know they've got the highest percentage sales of helicopters in the world because the rich people in that country can't go to the ground, because if they do, they get kidnapped and they get their fingers cut off because, while they might be looting the country, guys down below are going to get their piece, right? So it's like literally Escape from New York down in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, that sort of thing. Honestly, you go to Mexico, you got to I was talking to a guy a couple of days ago about growing up in the Congo. You know anything about the De Beers and the gold mines and the silver or the diamond mines and all that thing? Well, according to him, that's been going on really since the 80s in terms of like the bludgeoning and the machete deaths and the Civil War and millions of people being killed over diamonds and gold for, literally decades or maybe even centuries for that matter. But ultimately, he said, then they found like all of this, mineral deposits that are used in computers and the iPhones. And so then it just took the blood diamond and the gold up a notch, and people, what happens when you have corruption and you feed corruption and you let it get out of control, you wind up with the population, the most vulnerable, being slaughtered, being led to their death, being worked, becoming slaves, whatever the case. That's the history of the world. Who doesn't get that? In America, in the United States, the way I've always looked at it is if you can't champion and protect the most vulnerable in society, you're not a dynamic, thriving society that creates upward mobility through the integrity and the opportunity of academics, across the board, and then of course the integrity of law that holds the bad guys accountable. It's not that difficult. We all have jobs, right? We all have rules to follow. We all expect things to go the way they're supposed to go. And if you're in a job, like in construction, or if you work at the airport, or if you do this or that, the police, if you get out of line and you do something that is going to lead to damage or cost money to the company or actually lead to injury, you're going to get fired. So everybody pays attention to the rules. And I've got this theory that most of us have got to go to a job every single day to provide for our families. And you only know what you know within the four corners of your life, right? You have your ups and downs. You've got your personality issues. You got this, that, and the other. And shit will go on that affects your life that could be bad and devastating. And you don't really have a lot of time to pay attention to all of this bigger stuff until your kid gets freaking shot, unfortunately. I don't even want to say it, but in a crazy school shooting. Or you go to a grocery store and somebody absolutely, kills your grandmother. What? And then meanwhile, shit's hitting the fan all over the place, and then you find out, wait a second, tens of millions of people got set up in a heinous freaking criminal enterprise that the courts would allow illegal foreclosures and throw people on the streets and destroy them in a crime so ridden with rot and corruption, and then to find out at the end of it that we spent trillions of dollars to those bastards that did it. This has got to end. We're creating this intersection between the knowledge of the con. We're going to create a multimedia presentation. We're going to get out there. We're going to recruit people. We're going to try to find people to educate so that they can grow and then they can tell two friends and so on and so on and so on until we metastasize into this tidal wave movement of people that believe in liberty and justice for all above corruption and cowardice. That's my message. I'm Patrick Lovell. I approve this message. Onwards and upwards.